My name is Molly, I'm 32 years old, and I'm married to Justin, who's 35. He works in an office, while I'm a freelance fashion designer, working from home. In the beginning, my career was unpredictable, filled with small bursts of excitement, but everything changed when I landed a major project with a substantial paycheck. The success allowed Justin and me to move into a high-rise luxury apartment, a place I had always dreamed of living. Since it was my idea to move into such an upscale place, I agreed to cover the rent out of my own pocket. Justin was thrilled with our new home, and I thought we had a bright future ahead of us. I never could have imagined what would happen next. One day, Justin came home with his mother, Betty. She was 65 years old and had been living alone since her husband passed away 3 years ago. "Hi, Molly." "Hi, Betty. It's been a while. What's going on?" "Well, she wants to live with us," Justin said, clearly uncomfortable. "Why?" I asked, surprised. Justin explained that her house was getting old and she wanted to move to a better place. With limited funds, she asked if she could stay with us for a while. "Oh, I see." I understood the situation, but I wasn't exactly thrilled. Our apartment felt like a cozy haven for the two of us, and I wasn't close to Betty. The thought of having her move in felt like having a stranger in our home. "Please," Justin pleaded, taking my hands. "Her house is falling apart. I'll encourage her to find a new place soon." Okay, I reluctantly agreed, thinking it would only be for a short time. A month later, Betty moved in. "Thank you so much for letting me stay in such a fantastic apartment." "No problem, please make yourself at home," I said, forcing a smile. But just as she settled into her room, she turned to me and asked, "Sorry to dive right in, but may I borrow some money?" "Money?" I replied, stunned. She had barely unpacked her things, and she was already asking for a loan. I was taken aback by her straightforwardness. "Right, I've been seeing the doctor a lot lately, and it's been expensive. I just need a little help, please." "How much are you asking for?" "Around $300 for now." Given her age, I figured it was normal to have some health issues and medical bills could easily pile up. "All right," I said, pulling out $6 $50 bills from my purse and handing them to her. Not long after, Justin came to me for advice, his tone uneasy, which made me wonder if it was about Betty again. "You know, we should get a new car," he said out of the blue. The suggestion was so unexpected that I nearly fell off my chair. "What do you mean?" "We just bought a car 2 years ago." "Yeah, but it's too small. I think we should get a bigger one." I was baffled. The car was perfectly fine for the two of us, or 3, including Betty. Why did he care about the size? "I mean, my mom doesn't like it." "Why?" "I don't understand." I couldn't fathom why Betty would complain about a car that had nothing to do with her. She wants something more luxurious, like a Mercedes. What? I was completely lost. "That's ridiculous. We can't afford a car like that." Who had the money to change cars for such a trivial reason? Did Betty even have a driver's license? "I'm not buying an expensive car just because she doesn't like ours," I said, firmly rejecting his suggestion. At the time, I couldn't understand why Betty cared so much about the car. Then once again, Betty approached me for money. "My medical bills have gotten more expensive, and I'm falling behind on payments. Could you help me out again?" "Should I be concerned about your health?" I asked, starting to feel uneasy. I asked her what was wrong. She paused for a moment before replying, "Not really, I've just been feeling a bit depressed and having trouble sleeping. The therapist is quite expensive." "I'm really sorry." "I see. Well, if that's the case, how much do you need?" "About $1,000 for now," she said. I blinked in surprise. $1,000? I didn't know much about therapy, but that seemed excessive. "I'm sorry," she continued. My insurance only fully covers a limited number of sessions, and now I have to cover half of the costs. Ah, I see. Hold on, I'll get it to you by tomorrow, I replied, still shocked by the amount. I tried to be understanding, telling myself that therapy could be costly, depending on the treatment. But even after that, she kept coming up with excuses, medical bills, transportation fees to visit sick friends, to borrow more money from me. By the time I realized it, the amount had exceeded $5,000. Even though my job was going well, I was growing increasingly frustrated. Then one day I noticed something strange. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to take a peek into Betty's room. What I saw left me speechless. Designer bags and wallets were neatly arranged on the shelves. I was flabbergasted. I thought she didn't have money. How could she own such luxurious items? She had borrowed so much money from me, yet she had all this expensive stuff. I started to grow suspicious about Betty's so-called medical bills. A month later, she approached me for money again, asking casually as if it were nothing. "Can you wait a moment?" I replied, deciding that this was the time to confront her. I called Justin over, who seemed oblivious to the situation. "I want to take this opportunity to ask you, Betty, what exactly are you using the money for?" "Molly, what's going on?" Justin asked, clearly confused by the sudden question. "You know, my therapy sessions, prescriptions, and," she started to say, but her voice trailed off. "Not just those, right? You've been buying designer clothes, bags, and other expensive items, haven't you? Are you even really seeing a therapist?" "Of course I am," she insisted. "Then show me the receipts. You must have them, right?" "Well," she stammered, unable to say anything more when I pressed her with such a direct question. It became clear to me that she wasn't spending the money on her well-being, but on something else entirely. "Wait a second, what are you two talking about?" Justin asked, still baffled. "Betty has been squandering the money she borrowed from me," I explained. "It's more than $5,000, you know." Even then, Justin tried to defend her. "You're being too harsh. Can't you talk to her in a nicer way?" He had a soft spot for his mom. In other words, he was a mama's boy. "I don't have any receipts. I was shopping and eating out with my friends," Betty finally confessed. I couldn't believe how relaxed she had seemed despite supposedly having no money, and she hadn't appeared depressed at all. "If it was all a lie, then pay me back right now," I demanded. Betty looked at me with pleading eyes. "Wait, I can't come up with that amount right away." I had reached my limit. I pointed toward her room and said, "You've got all that designer stuff in there. Resell it all. Otherwise, please move out." Justin immediately jumped in to defend her. "Hey, you're being so one-sided. She deserves a little luxury too." "Luxury? I wouldn't call spending money you've borrowed a luxury. More than $5,000 down the drain. It's like a scam." "You're being disrespectful," Justin snapped. "Don't act so arrogant just because you're paying the rent here. If you're not happy with this, you can get out." "What? That's ridiculous." I was boiling with anger, feeling like steam was about to shoot out of my ears. I glared at him furiously. "Did I say anything wrong? You created this mess by bringing Betty here in the first place. And what do? Nothing but lays around at home. Who do you think makes it possible for us to live in such a nice place?" I couldn't hold back any longer. "You're so condescending, it's infuriating. Get the heck out now." Rage had completely taken over him. "Fine, don't regret this," I said, gathering only the essentials before leaving the apartment. I quickly found a new place to live. Since I worked remotely, I could do my job from anywhere, and I wasn't fixated on living in a high-rise as long as my new home was comfortable. Now, what to do next? I had no intention of returning to that place. I had been the one paying the rent every month, and I doubted Justin would be interested in taking over. Even if he wanted to, there was no way he could afford it on his salary. My income was far higher than his. I went to consult with the realtor who had helped me before. I'm finding it difficult to keep up with the rent due to personal reasons, I lied, though I could easily afford it. I'm sorry to hear that. What would you like to do? The realtor asked sympathetically. I explained my situation and asked for a favor. A few days later, while I was working, Justin called me. What? I answered. What do you mean, what? What have you done? We've been told to move out because the lease was cancelled. Yes, I asked the property agent for permission to break the lease, I replied calmly. I don't live there anymore, so I have no reason to keep paying the rent. Don't you understand that? But my mom and I still live here. What are we supposed to do? He exclaimed, clearly frustrated. I couldn't believe he was still clinging to that nonsense. I was astounded and said coolly, I don't live there anymore, so why should I continue taking care of the apartment? If you're in trouble, you should talk to your mom and maybe sell some of her things to raise some money. He shot back angrily, it was you who wanted to live in a high-rise. If you don't want to move, why don't you take over the lease yourself? Wait, I said, I guess you can't afford it with your salary. You must be frustrated because you can't come up with a better argument. He was clearly exasperated. You should be able to manage a lower-cost apartment. Why not fight for the lease and move in with your mom? Are you out of your mind? I retorted. My mom's already spent the money from selling her house, and I don't have any savings. How do you expect me to find a new place? None of my business, I added coldly. He had been relying on my income for the most part, so I was baffled at how he still had no savings. It was clear that both he and his mother had been irresponsible. You brought this on yourselves, I said, and you'll have to figure it out from now on. Are you telling us we'll be homeless? You're still my wife, he protested. I told you, figure it out yourself. I'm done with this. Goodbye. I hung up on him. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Betty. Melly, I'm really sorry. I promise I'll pay you back. Please don't kick us out, she begged, her voice trembling with tears. I was taken aback and felt a pang of sadness. I didn't want to teach an older person a lesson, but the reality was harsh. You need to live within your means. If you have a limited retirement income, you should adjust your lifestyle accordingly. If you want a higher standard of living, you need to work for it. As a freelancer, I understood that achieving a certain lifestyle required hard work and financial independence, not relying on others. Really sorry, Betty said, still crying. Please don't let us be out on the street. I'm sorry, I replied coldly. But the apartment has already been leased to someone else. You really do need to move out. This is a matter of regulation. Ended the call and later heard from the realtor that Justin and Betty had begged him to let them stay, but he informed them that a new tenant was moving in soon, and they had to leave. Even if they had stayed, Justin's salary alone would have been consumed by the rent, leaving them unable to afford anything else. It was absurd to expect me to keep paying for their housing while they relied on my support. His outburst had only added to my frustration. The situation had reached the point of no return. What an idiot, I thought. I later heard from acquaintances that Justin and Betty were struggling to find a permanent place to live. They were moving from one motel to another because they couldn't afford the broker's fee or deposit for an apartment, and no one was willing to be their guarantor. Even if they had used a guarantor service, they still needed to cover the broker's fee and deposit themselves. Betty had only worked for a short period, so her Social Security benefits were minimal. They were even having trouble affording food. They had brought this situation upon themselves. Meanwhile, I had managed to secure another major project and was becoming financially more stable. Reflecting on our marriage, I realized that depending on someone else for financial support or leaving everything to a partner is unsustainable. It only leads to pain when things go wrong. Justin and I had separated for a while and eventually divorced. Our feelings for each other had cooled, and there was no reason to stay married. Now, as strangers, I feel a sense of relief. If I were to marry again, I would be more discerning and take my time to find the right partner. A divorce taught me valuable lessons and gave me a broader perspective on life.